Welcome to Unity. This video will quickly go over the interface layout that you see in front of you. Don't worry too much about opening Unity. It's fine if you already have it open. So just sit back and learn about some of these different windows we see in front of us. Let's quickly go over what the menu bar is. The menu bar is this very top bar, and it contains familiar things such as File, Edit, Window, Help, and a few other little things you may not be familiar with quite yet, specific to Unity, these three guys right here. File lets you open and save scenes and projects. Think of a scene as a level in your game, or a title menu, or a loading screen, or what have you. A project is the whole game itself. It contains all the assets and levels within your game. Edit lets you do some of the normal things such as copy and paste. That lets you duplicate and delete. And it's also got some menus for settings inside of your project. Assets are something unique to Unity that you may not find in other applications. Assets are basically any kind of external model, texture, sound file that you bring into Unity. It's also could be a script or a folder that you create with inside of Unity, or a material, or any custom animations, or physics materials. Anything that you see here. Game objects are actually objects that you create inside of Unity. That's not a very good definition, so let's see it in action. Let's go ahead and create an empty right here, and we can see inside of our hierarchy, which is kind of the outliner of our project or our current scene, we have this new game object right here, but we don't see anything in the screen. This is an empty game object, and it allows you to make prefabs, nest things, all kinds of stuff like that. You can also, game objects also consist of maybe a camera. Basically, game objects are anything that you can actively manipulate inside of Unity and that has their own components. So we can make cameras, we can make directional lights, we can create a cube. That's a game object inside of Unity. There we go. Components actually are the qualities of each game object. Every game object has a set of, a set of properties unique to that game object, such as transforms, colliders, rendering options, what have you. So we'll get into components and game objects later on in the course. They'll be both very important to learn about. And these menus kind of just control each. Window is pretty important. If you ever find yourself messing up the scale of a window, like how did you do that, what happened here, you can just go to Window, go to Layouts, and you can pick between all these preset layouts. Default is what you initially see when you open up Unity. So always keep that in mind. Window lets you kind of arrange all the different windows and whatnot here. And let's quickly kind of go over how you can manipulate and scale and move around windows. Just like Maya, you can pull out windows. You can arrange them differently. You can stretch and shrink them just by grabbing the edges of each window, clicking and dragging. So let's go back to default. The help menu option basically lets you go to Unity's website, forum, answers, feedback. If you have a question about Unity, this little option here will help you find out the answer. So now we have our second part of the interface, which is our control tools right here. They correspond to the Q, W, E, and R, and that might be familiar for Maya users. Unity's interface and setup is very Maya friendly. So if you're a Maya Power user, you're going to feel right at home inside of Unity, which is a plus for us. So this little hand right here is not the cursor, it's actually a little panning hand. So if you want to pan around your scene, you can, no problem. And then we have our translate, rotate, and scale options, bound to E, W, and R, W, E, and R. And moving inside of Maya is the same as, or moving inside of Unity rather, is the same as Maya, in that we can hold down the alternate key. If we do that, if we hold down the Alt key and left click, we can rotate. If we hold down the Alt key and hold our middle mouse button, we can pan. And if we hold down the Alt key and use our right mouse button, we can zoom in and out. Alright, let's say I have this cube selected. I can move it with the move key, If I press our rotate key, I can rotate in the game object, and I can scale it with here. Again, W, E, and R on the keyboard correspond to those shortcuts. Pivot and center allow you to adjust the pivot point of your object, and that's not very visible within this cube, but let's say you imported a cube that was sitting right on the axis here. Well, its pivot point would be on the bottom of the cube. Center and pivot would let you switch between the actual pivot of the object and the original imported pivot of the object. And local and global basically just shift between the transforms to locally of the object and how they correspond to the whole scene. You can switch between those two options there. Hierarchy right here to our left is basically our outliner of our current scene. You can see I've already created these game objects here, and they show up right in a hierarchy. Anything inside of our scene is going to show up within our hierarchy. And our hierarchy is pretty nice because I can take this empty game object and I can put this cube, left click and drag, right inside of that game object. And now we have a parented cube inside of this game object. So just like the outliner, we can parent things and give us a little bit more control with making groups and everything associated with that. So the hierarchy is very awesome and important. If you have a huge scene, you can search for things and you can notice the scene window right here changing. Or if I wanted to find all my cameras, I could type camera. Or you can create new game objects through the create menu right there, create option. Alright, so let's go over our scene view next. Our scene view is basically is our working viewport of our current level or scene. We can switch between different modes of rendering, wireframe, a textured wire, so we can see our textures, which is pure white on this cube, or rendering paths, which layers get rendered first, and if we had a light map, different resolutions of that. Let's just leave it textured right now. Just let you see alphas, overdraws, all that good stuff that you might find useful later on within your project time with Unity. And we can go with orthographic or 3D views. We can turn the lights on and off of our scene. We can turn the audio effects on and off. And we have different effects here that we can turn on and off. Our game panel right here, right next to our scene, this is what we actually see within our game view. And right now, it's just blue. So if we hit play, we just have a blue screen, nothing's going on. Whenever you're building out your scenes, let's grab our main camera in our hierarchy. There we go. See now, and we have a camera preview going on right here, but our game's still empty. That's because I have this extra little camera here, and it's going through that. So let's delete that camera, and let's check out our game now. Now we see our cube in all of its glory. There we go. Alright, so that's our game view. It's basically what the user will see, the audience member will see when they play your game. It's a preview of that. Alright, so let's go and look at our inspector next. So let's go and select our cube, and let's look at our inspector. Like I said earlier, our inspector has all the properties you might find, or components. Remember that word component? Components are all the properties attached to a certain asset or game object now that it's in our scene. And it has such options such as the transforms. So when I move my cube, you can see these values change. It also has different components such as a collider. So if we wanted to add physics to it, we could also go to add component and go to physics, and we could give it a rigid body if you want to control its velocity and this and that. So our component window or our inspector window be very important in the coming lessons. You can even create your own custom components through scripts. Alright, so now let's look at our project panel. Right now, since this is a brand new project, I imported a package so we could see what's going on here. And inside of our project window, we see every single asset that we can make use of in our game. Right now, we just have see how it's nested, and you can kind of click through them here. We just have the standard character controller built in Unity. It lets you go into first-person view or third-person. But since we don't have a level, I really can't show those off. Those will come in following lectures. But this asset project panel is just here to show you everything that you have inside your game, all the materials, textures, meshes, all your prefabs that we'll get into a little bit later. Everything that you've imported into Unity will be in your assets right here. And this little window right here will give you a preview or a close-up thing. So if we go to select my sources, this is everything inside the sources folder. And here's a quick tip. If you hold down the control button and mouse scroll, you can change, or click this little slider, you can change the size of every asset within this panel right here. I personally like to keep it just in list mode because when your assets pile up, it's a little bit easier to keep track of everything that way. And last but not least, we have our console right here. Let's go ahead and clear it. Every single error, every single warning, anything that you print out to the console when you're scripting will show up here. So this is Unity's way of communicating with you that something's wrong, or that different print commands that you've coded in will show up. Unity's just saying, hey, this is how I'm communicating with you. And it'll be very, very useful whenever we're trying to fix bugs in our code or any kind of syntax errors. So that's our console window right there. So that does it for a quick overview of Unity. I hope it's not too confusing. One of the nice things about Unity is that it's pretty bare bones. So basically you can start from square one on any kind of project and really mold it to your liking. And you'll get used to the panels and windows and hierarchies and inspectors as we move along through our lectures. So we're not going to jump in too fast. You'll get a hang of everything really easily. So in our next video, we're going to jump into Maya and see how we can prepare our assets, such as models and textures or anything like that, and bring them into Unity. Thank you.